The autumn rain painted the sidewalks of downtown Seattle in a mosaic of glistening reflections, each petal shimmering beneath flickering streetlights and hurried footsteps. Emily Santos tugged her thin sweater tighter around her shoulders as she darted between buildings, clutching her overstuffed tote bag. Inside were half-worn textbooks from second-hand shops and a folded apron still faintly dusted in flour from her shift at Lyman's Bakery. At 23, Emily had become an expert in navigating life on a budget. By day, she worked behind the counter of the small neighborhood baker kneading dough, boxing pastries, and serving regulars with a warm, practiced smile. By night, she raced across town to attend business classes at the local community college, hoping to earn a degree that would someday help her build something better. Home wasn't far away, just a modest apartment above an old coin laundry on the edge of Beacon Hill. It was where Rosa, her 72-year-old grandmother, waited each evening with chamomile tea and the radio softly humming boleros from her youth. Rosa had raised Emily since she was a child, and now Emily worked tirelessly to care for the woman who had sacrificed so much for her. But today had been harder than most. The rain had started before sunrise, and by sunset, it still hadn't let up. Emily's shoes were soaked, her hair clinging to her cheeks, and her stomach empty save for a leftover scone she'd snagged during her break. Just 10 more minutes, she whispered to herself as she sprinted down the block, eyes on the glowing bus stop sign ahead. Her final class of the week was at 7th Accounting, her least favorite bit. She couldn't afford to be late. Meanwhile, just 8 blocks away, another life was unfolding in glossy, polished contrast. Inside the shimmering glass tower of Hale Innovations, Nathan Hale, 29, closed his laptop with a sigh. Another quarterly meeting, another merger secured. The figures on the screen confirmed it. Profits were up, expansion was underway, and the stockholders were pleased. But Nathan wasn't. From the outside, he was the perfect image of success, billionaire founder of one of the country's fastest-growing educational tech companies. His name was frequently listed among Seattle's top entrepreneurs, and his face had graced more business magazine covers than he cared to remember. But inside, he felt disconnected and unfulfilled. He loosened the knot of his tie and ran a hand through his rain-dampened hair, ignoring the notification pinging on his smartwatch. The gala tonight would be another blur of polite conversations, hala praise, and champagne flutes clinking against curated smiles. He had every luxury imaginable: private cars, penthouse views, imported suits. But he hadn't felt seen, truly seen, in years. His driver, Andre, waited just outside the lobby in the sleek black Tesla. But Nathan shook his head at the waiting valet and instead stepped into the rain. He needed the walk, just a few blocks, just to feel something real. As fate would have it, both Emily and Nathan turned onto Pine Street at the exact same moment. Emily rounded the corner at full speed, her boots splashing through puddles as she glanced up toward the disappearing taillights of her bus. Panic flashed across her face. She quickened her pace and collided headfirst into a tall, broad figure coming the other way. Her bag burst open, textbooks and receipts flying like autumn leaves across the wet sidewalk. Emily slipped backward, heart leaping to her throat, bracing for impact. But instead of pavement, she found herself steadied by strong arms and a solid chest. "Oh no, I am so sorry," she blurted, cheeks flushing crimson. Nathan blinked, startled by the force of the collision. He looked down to see a petite woman with rain-matted dark hair and warm brown eyes, wide with alarm. His hand still rested gently on her shoulders, anchoring her in place. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I don't think so, just my pride." She laughed awkwardly, stepping back. "And maybe my notes." Together, they looked down at the mess around them. Pages soaked, a textbook lying spine down in a puddle, a canvas bag half-zipped and completely drenched. Before Emily could protest, Nathan crouched down and began scooping up the soggy papers. His custom-tailored suit darkened with water instantly, but he didn't flinch. "You don't have to do that, your clothes." Emily knelt beside him. "It's just a suit," he said simply, handing her a half-crumpled schedule. These look important. Yeah, they are. Business classes. I work days at a bakery. I'm actually late to accounting class right now. She stopped herself, frowning. I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. Nathan smiled. Because you're flustered. And I did just help scatter your life across the sidewalk. She looked up at him, something warm and electric sparking in her chest. There was something oddly gentle about him despite the watch that probably cost more than her rent, and the leather shoes now soaking in rainwater. They managed to salvage most of her belongings, though many were beyond saving. As they stood, Emily tried not to meet his eyes again, afraid the vulnerability might show. I'm Emily, she offered finally, adjusting her bag. Nathan Hale, he extended a hand. Emily's brow furrowed. Yeah, he chuckled. Like the historical figure. No relation. Well, thank you, Nathan. Really? She glanced over her shoulder and sighed. Her bus had long since vanished. Where were you headed? He asked. Community college. Downtown campus. Then let me give you a ride. Emily froze. Rose's voice echoed in her head. Never getting cars with strangers. But he didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Not after crawling through the rain beside her. I don't want to be a bother. You're not. Please. Nathan gestured to the Tesla idling just round the corner. It's the least I can do. Something in his tone softened her doubts. She nodded slowly. Inside the car, warmth wrapped around her instantly. Heated seats. Quiet classical music. Soft leather interiors. It felt like another world. She sat on the edge of the seat, careful not to drip on anything. Andre greeted her politely in the rearview mirror as Nathan climbed in beside her. Seattle Community College, he said. Andre, take the long way, Nathan added, almost as an afterthought. Emily shot him a curious glance. So Nathan began, why business classes? She hesitated, then answered, I want to start a community literacy center one day. Maybe expand the bakery into something bigger, support programs for kids, elderly neighbors. My grandma raised me. She's my reason for everything. Nathan listened, captivated. In his world, business was numbers, scale, margins. In Emily's, it was impact, human, personal. He admired that. And you? She asked. I work in tech, he said vaguely. Oh, what kind? Educational software, platforms for online learning. Not technically a lie, but not the full truth either. They talked all the way to her school about books, about family, about hope. When they arrived, she gathered her things, then paused. Thank you, she said softly. He looked at her, heart pulling in an unfamiliar way. Can I see you again? Emily blinked. I mean, maybe when you're not rushing or tackling strangers in the rain. She laughed. Sure, coffee sometime. Coffee, Nathan repeated, like a promise. They exchanged numbers. As she stepped out into the rain, she turned and waved. He waved back, feeling astonishingly. Something had shifted, and neither of them knew it yet. But their lives would never be the same. 3 days had passed since that rainy encounter, and Emily still found herself replaying it in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Nathan's steady gray gaze, feel the warmth of his hand when he caught her from falling, and hear the comforting steadiness in his voice as he knelt beside her in the pouring rain to rescue her soaked notes. It was the kind of gesture she had only read about in novels. On Saturday morning, her phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. Nathan Hale. Her heart skipped a beat. Hi, Emily. It's Nathan. From the other day. Still up for coffee, if you're free? Her lips curled into a slow smile as she texted back, yes. When and where? He suggested a small cafe in Capitol Hill Juniper's corner. A warm and unassuming place nestled between a used record store and a vintage flower shop. It was casual, charming, and utterly perfect. Preparing for the unexpected, Emily stood in front of the small bathroom mirror, adjusting the color of her only good dress, her soft navy piece with a modest neckline and a flowy hem that danced around her knees. Rosa peeked into the room. You look beautiful, Major, she said, her voice gentle with approval. I feel like I'm going on a job interview, Emily murmured, smoothing down a wrinkle. Not a date. Rosa chuckled. A date, eh? He's the one who should be nervous. That made Emily laugh, easing her nerves. She slipped her grandmother's silver pendant round her neck, simple, delicate, and worn with love, and headed out the door. Meanwhile, Nathan arrived early. He had debated what to wear for too long before finally settling on a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. He traded his watch for something less noticeable and made sure the car dropped him off 2 blocks away from the cafe. He didn't want to look like a billionaire today. He wanted to look like a man hoping to get to know someone extraordinary, a conversation between 2 worlds. When Emily entered the cafe, Nathan stood up immediately, nearly knocking over his coffee in the process. His breath caught in his throat. She looked radiant not because of the dress, though she wore it beautifully, a bit because she carried herself with grace and warmth that lit up the room. "You look amazing," he said, eyes soft. Emily blushed. "Thank you. This place is really nice." They sat down, each holding their coffee cups like lifelines. Their conversation started shy and cautious, like a song searching for the right key. But as they spoke, the rhythm found itself. They talked about books, favorite authors, movies that made them cry, and the best local places to watch the sunset. Nathan learned that Emily had a passion for literacy and children's education. He watched her face light up as she described her dreams to create learning centers that doubled as safe spaces for kids in underserved neighborhoods. "I want to give them what I didn't have," she said simply, "a place to dream." Nathan was moved. He'd donated millions to education. But hearing Emily speak, he realized how little he understood about the people those donations were meant to help. "What about you?" she asked. "I started a tech company," he said. "Educational software mostly. We build platforms that help schools and students connect better." He expected the usual or the wide-eyed realization of who he really was. But Emily just smiled. "That sounds like a good way to use your talents." And just like that, he felt seen. A walk through the city. After coffee, neither wanted to say goodbye. The cafe buzzed with late morning chatter, and the rain had finally stopped. Nathan offered to walk Emily home, and she agreed. They strolled past murals and corner musicians, hints brushing now and then, laughter spilling into the air. Nathan showed her his favorite bookstore, and Emily pointed out the tiny park where she used to read as a child. By the time they reached her apartment building, the sun had broken through the clouds. Emily paused on the steps. "Thank you for today," she said. "It was lovely." Nathan smiled. "Can I see you again?" She nodded. "I'd like that." He turned to leave, then hesitated. "Emily, yes, you're unlike anyone I've ever met." She watched him walk away, heart fluttering, and upstairs, Rosa peeked through the curtain, smiling as her granddaughter stood in the sunlight, bathed in something more hopeful than any golden beam. New beginnings. Emily hadn't stopped smiling since Saturday. Every spare second between shifts at the bakery and scribbled notes in her business class was spent recalling the quiet intensity in Nathan's eyes, the comfort of their conversations, and the surprising ease with which she had let herself feel something so vulnerable, so real. Rosa, always attuned to the subtle shifts in her granddaughter's demeanor, noticed the dreamy quality that had replaced Emily's usual fatigue. "He's in your thoughts more than cinnamon rolls and spreadsheets, eh?" she teased gently one evening as they folded laundry together. Emily laughed softly. "He's kind, Upweller, really kind, and different." "You mean he sees you?" Rosa said with a knowing smile. "And that makes all the difference." An unlikely routine. Over the next several weeks, Emily and Nathan carved out moments from their chaotic lives to be together. He met her outside her night class with hot cocoa on particularly cold evenings. She brought him pastries from the bakery, always wrapped in napkins with scribbled notes like, "Don't forget to eat today." Sometimes they walked through quiet neighborhoods. Other times they sat in the park, talking until the stars appeared. They didn't need fancy dinners or elaborate dates. They just needed tamariel and filtered tomato and cover each other's worlds. Nathan found her honesty refreshing. She wasn't trying to impress him, wasn't tiptoeing around his success. She spoke to him like he was just another person, not a billionaire, and Emily found herself letting go of her protective shell, allowing Nathan into the quiet spaces of her heart that had been closed off for years. One afternoon, as they sat near the waterfront watching ferries glide across Elliott Bay, Emily shared stories about her childhood nights she read books to Roser by candlelight during blackouts. How she used to dream of traveling, but had never left the state. "You deserve to see the world," Nathan said quietly. Emily smiled. "I'd settle for seeing more of this city with you, in the company of books and dreams." Nathan surprised Emily one weekend by taking her to a hidden gem of a bookstore tucked between two warehouses in Fremont. The place smelled of old pages and cinnamon tea. Emily's eyes lit up as she wandered the aisles, tracing her fingers across the spines of titles she couldn't afford, but had long admired. "I could live here," she whispered reverently. Nathan, watching her with something close to awe, whispered back, "I think I just found my favorite place too." They spent the afternoon coiled into a window nook with coffee and poetry, their legs pressed together, reading aloud to each other in quiet voices. It wasn't romantic in the grand sense, sight was quiet and sacred, safe. When the sun began to dip, Nathan helped Emily select books and insisted on buying them, despite her protests. "You'll return the favor when you're a CEO one day," he joked. "Then I'll buy you a bookstore," she shot back. He laughed, but the idea didn't seem so far-fetched. The first kiss. It was nearly midnight when Nathan walked Emily home that night. They stood on the porch beneath the soft glow of the street lamp, a comfortable silence between them. "I should go," he said, but made no move to leave. Emily bit her lip, her heart fluttering. "You should." He leaned in slowly, watching her expression. "Unless." She rose to her toes and kissed him softly, tentative, warm, and full of wonder. When they parted, both of them looked slightly dazed. "I've been wanting to do that since the day I met you," he confessed. "Me too," she whispered. Above them, the sky stretched dark and infinite, stars blinking their quiet approval. Meeting Rosa. It wasn't long before Nathan asked if he could meet Rosa properly. Emily hesitated, not because she was embarrassed, but because she wanted the moment to be right. Rosa, ever gracious, prepared tamales and invited Nathan for dinner the following Sunday. Nathan arrived with a bouquet of wild flowers and genuine nerves. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, a far cry from his usual tailored suits. He helped set the table, asked Rosa questions about her childhood in Colombia, and laughed when she quizzed him about his intentions. "He's good," Rosa whispered to Emily afterward, "but I'll still keep my eye on him." Emily grinned. "That's fair." A shift in the wind. One rainy Thursday, as Emily was finishing her shift, she got a call from the hospital. Rosa had collapsed at her cleaning job and had been taken in for observation. Nathan met her at the door, his coat soaked, worry etched into his features. "She'll be okay," he whispered, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Whatever she needs, well, make sure she gets it." Emily buried her face into his chest, grateful not just for his presence, but for the way he carried her fear as if it were his own. As they sat in the hospital waiting room, Emily looked at him through teary eyes and whispered, "I don't think I've ever felt this close to someone before." Nathan kissed her forehead. "Then let's not let go." The hospital walls hummed with quiet beeping and distant footsteps as Emily sat by Rosa's bedside. The monitors blinked steadily, and the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen tank was both a comfort and a reminder of the fragility of the moment. Rosa had suffered a mild stroke and not life-threatening. The doctors said that it had shaken Emily to her core. Nathan hadn't left her side. For the past 24 hours, he had run errands, arranged appointments, and even brought Rosa's favorite lavender hand cream from home. Emily watched him now, asleep in the corner chair, his arms crossed and his head resting against the wall. She realized he'd stayed awake most of the night just to be there. She reached over and gently touched Rosa's wrinkled hand. "We'll get through this," she whispered. Rosa stirred and opened her eyes slowly. Queried, "Do you look like you haven't slept?" Emily blinked away the tears threatening to form. "Neither have you, apparently." Rosa's eyes moved to Nathan, and a tired smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. He stayed. Emily nodded. He wouldn't go. Rosa squeezed her granddaughter's hand. He's one of the good ones. The weight of two worlds. The following week was a whirlwind of hospital visits, medication schedules, and conversations with social workers. Emily found herself balancing Rose's recovery, bakery shifts, and classwork, all while trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Nathan became her constant anchor. He hired a private nurse to help care for Rosie at home and discreetly covered medical expenses Emily didn't have the harder Prada to argue against. Yet despite his generosity, she couldn't help but feel the growing weight of their differences. One afternoon, as they sat in the bakery's tiny break room sharing a plate of leftover empanadas, Emily said, "You don't have to fix everything, Nathan." He set down his coffee. "I know, but I want to help. You already do. Just by being here, just by listening." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Then I'll keep doing that." Meeting the parents. It was inevitable. Nathan's world couldn't remain a mystery forever. When he asked Emily to join him for dinner with his parents, she hesitated. "Are you sure they want to meet me? They don't get to choose who I love." He replied simply. Love. The word hung in the air, warm and terrifying. Emily smoothed her second-hand dress and clutched her thrifted clutch bag as they entered the Hill family estate in Bellevue. The chandelier in the foyer was bigger than her entire living room. Richard and Elizabeth Hill were gracious, but distant, their politeness tinged with the kind of reservation Emily had expected. She answered their questions with quiet dignity, talked about her classes, her work, Rosa, and her dreams of a literacy center. Afterward, Nathan drove her home in silence until she finally asked, "Do you think they liked me?" He looked over. They'll learn to. Trust tested. The strain of their worlds colliding began to show. Nathan's board was pushing for an expansion into Asia, and he'd been offered a 6-month opportunity in Singapore to oversee the project. "I want you to come with me," he said one evening. Emily looked at him, stunned. "Nathan, I can't leave Rosa, and I can't leave the bakery. Mrs. Lyman's counting on me." His shoulders tensed. "It's only 6 months. It's not just time. It's everything." Silence stretched between them. For the first time, their dreams didn't align. That night, Emily cried into Rosa's shoulder. "I love him, Abuela, but I can't give up everything." Rosa stroked her hair. "Then he'll have to choose what matters most." The choice. Nathan boarded a flight to Singapore 2 days later. After a quiet and tearful goodbye, they didn't call it a breakup, but both felt the sharp ache of separation. Weeks passed. Emily buried herself in work and Rosa's recovery. She still walked past the bench where they'd shared their first kiss, still reread his old texts when sleep evaded her. Then, one chilly morning, she walked into the bakery to find Nathan waiting by the counter, holding 2 cups of coffee and a shy smile. "You're supposed to be in Singapore," she said, blinking. "I was, for 2 weeks, but I realized something." He stepped closer, eyes soft. "Every deal, every success, it means nothing if I don't get to share it with you." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Nathan, I want a life where we build things together. A life where your dreams matter just as much as mine." She threw her arms round him. The storm had passed. They stood in the middle of the bakery, surrounded by the scent of bread and warmth and hope, and knew they were exactly where they belonged. The days following Nathan's unexpected return were quiet, but full of meaning. Emily and Nathan didn't rush into declarations or promises. Instead, they returned to the rhythm they had once known: late-night walks, warm drinks shared in silence, and soft smiles exchanged over bakery counters. But something had shifted. There was a new honesty between them, the kind that came only after weathering a storm together. Rebuilding trust. Nathan didn't try to pick up where they left off. He started again, showing up for her without expectation, asking about her day with genuine interest, helping Rosa around the house, and listening more than he spoke. One evening, Emily invited him in after dinner. Rosa, feeling better than she had in weeks, had just gone to bed. The apartment was dimly lit, the scent of cinnamon and chamomile lingering in the air. "Do you regret going to Singapore?" Emily asked softly, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. He shook his head. I regret staying as long as I did, because every moment away from you made it clear how much you mean to me. Emily held his gaze. I was scared I wasn't enough for your world, that I always feel small beside you. Nathan reached for her hand. You are the strongest person I know. You've built something out of nothing, and when I lost sight of that, I lost sight of us. Their fingers intertwined. The healing had begun, the foundation of something new. The next few weeks brought small, powerful changes. Emily's business classes resumed, and with Rosa gaining strength each day, she found time to meet with a community board about opening a literacy center in South Seattle. Nathan, inspired by her vision, offered to fund a feasibility study and connected her with urban development consultants. But this time, he let Emily lead. This is your dream, he said. I just want to support it. One afternoon, as they toured an abandoned building with potential, Emily said, this is what I've always wanted. A place where kids can come after school, where mothers can learn to read with their children, where stories give people hope. Nathan looked at her like she was the story he wanted most to read. The climb. But dreams, like love, demand work. Nathan faced resistance from his company's board about investing time and resources into the literacy initiative. They saw it as a distraction. He pushed back, setting clear priorities. His company would stand for purpose, not just profit. Emily, too, faced doubts from city officials and skeptics who questioned her qualifications. You're just a bakery clerk, one councilman said. She returned home that night deflated. You're not just anything, Nathan told her. You're the kind of leader the world needs. Let's prove them wrong. Together, they spent late nights drafting proposals, meeting with donors, and rallying volunteers. Slowly, people began to believe. The confession. One evening, after a long planning session, Emily and Nathan stood on the rooftop of the old building, watching the city lights flicker. Nathan turned to her. I've never told you this, but before I met you, I didn't believe in forever. I thought love was a transaction, measured in what you could give or get. Emily listened quietly. You changed that. You showed me that love is service. It's sacrifice. It's choosing someone even when it's hard. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm not proposing. Not yet, he said with a smile. But I am promising that I'll stand beside you, that I'll climb with you, no matter how steep it gets. Emily opened the box to find a simple gold necklace with a tiny book charm. For the story we're writing, he whispered. Tears glistened in her eyes. She reached up, kissed him gently, and said, then let's keep turning the pages. The days that followed Nathan's return were filled with a quiet kind of joy of rediscovery. Emily had never imagined that someone like him, a man born into luxury and brilliance, would give up any part of that world to return to her small, flour-dusted corner of it. But he had, and she knew the sacrifice wasn't just romantic, it was real. Nathan had resumed his work remotely, splitting time between video calls with engineers in Asia and after-dinner walks with Emily and Rose around the neighborhood. It wasn't easy. He was still fielding pressure from his board, navigating shareholder demands, and managing expansion projects from thousands of miles away. But he never let it come between them. Emily, too, was adjusting. Mrs. Lyman had officially made her the bakery's assistant manager, a title that came with added hours, responsibilities, and a glimmer of hope that one day she might inherit the place. Her coursework was reaching a peak as well. Capstone projects, presentations, and late-night study sessions at the kitchen table. And yet, they found peace in their evenings. Together, home in the making. One Sunday morning, as sunlight streamed through the lace curtains of Rose's apartment, Nathan surprised Emily with a rolled-up sketch. She blinked, then unrolled it carefully across the table. Is this a floor plan? He said. A house, small, warm, in the neighborhood, with a garden in back for Rosa, and a study nook for you, and a window bench for reading. We could build it together. Emily stared at the paper, her fingers brushing over the tiny labeled spaces. Kitchen, living room, nursery. Her eyes widened. Nursery. Nathan cleared his throat. Someday, I mean, if we ever. Emily's heart caught in her throat. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead. It's beautiful, she whispered, but we don't need a house to have a home. I know, he said, taking her hand, but I want to build something permanent with you. Storms on the horizon. Just as life began to settle into a gentle rhythm, a letter arrived that changed everything. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in her hands. It's from the Seattle Women's Business Fellowship, she whispered. Nathan turned, alert. The scholarship you applied for? She nodded, lips pressed tightly. Then she opened it. Congratulations. Full scholarship. 2-year MBA program. Starts in the fall. Emily gasped, then covered her mouth. I got it. I actually got it. Nathan stood and scooped her into his arms, spinning her around. Rosa clapped from the doorway, a smile lighting her wrinkled face. But later that night, when the celebration had faded into quiet, reality returned. The program required full-time attendance, which meant quitting the bakery, pulling back from caring for Rosa, giving up everything stable again, and Nathan's expansion project, delayed, but not forever. His investors would only wait so long. Tug of ambitions. We're always balancing, Emily said one evening, curled into Nathan's arms. My dreams, your work, our responsibilities. Nathan kissed her forehead. Maybe that's what love really is, holding on through the imbalance. But imbalance brought tension. She missed dinners because of night classes. He missed her presentations due to board meetings. Rosa had another health scare that left Emily racked with guilt for not being there. They fought, not about love, but about time, about choices. You can't do everything, Nathan said gently one night as Emily sat exhausted at the kitchen table. I have to try, she replied, because if I don't push now, everything we're building slips away. He took her hands. Then let's push together. The turning point. One rainy afternoon, Emily found herself standing in the community center they had once dreamed of building. Only now it existed. Half-finished walls, a donated roof, and a banner that read, Future Home of the Santos Hill Literacy Initiative. Nathan had been quietly funding its construction with every extra cent that didn't go to his company or their life. He had even gotten Rosa involved in the storytelling room for children. Emily walked through the empty shell of what would become their shared legacy. Tears filled her eyes. He believed in her dream even when she was too tired to remember it. She turned to find Nathan behind her, soaked from the rain. I didn't want to show you until it was closer to done, he said. But I thought you might need to see where all this hard work is going. Emily ran to him, throwing her arms round his neck. It's perfect. Choosing forward. That night, curled up with cocoa and blankets, and the sound of Rosa humming in the next room, Emily whispered, let's keep climbing, even when it's hard, even when we fall back. Nathan looked at her, eyes warm and steady, always. And so, they did, through exams and deadlines, investor calls and health scares, through laughter and tears, and the quiet courage of two people choosing each other over and over again. Their tides had risen, but so had they. The summer sun cast golden streaks across the walls of the new literacy center, filtering through wide windows that overlooked the bustle of the Beacon Hill neighborhood. Inside, fresh paint still clung to the air, and volunteers buzzed from room to room, assembling bookshelves, and packing donated materials, and wiring the last light fixtures. The grand opening was only a week away, and yet it already felt Olivia dream on the edge of becoming real. Emily stood in the doorway of the reading room, her fingers trailing along the smooth, honey-colored shelves Nathan had helped sand himself. In the center of the room stood a circular rug, hand-stitched by Rosa and patterned with animals, stars, and stories. It was meant for Story Tim Rosa's domain. She turned to Nathan, who was adjusting a smartboard in the classroom adjacent. He looked up and grinned. We're almost there. Emily nodded, her heart full. It's everything I hoped it would be. Building together. It had taken months of relentless effort, juggling Emily's MBA courses, Nathan scaled back tech responsibilities, and Rose's ongoing recovery had demanded more from them than either anticipated. There were late nights filled with budget spreadsheets and early mornings filled with bakery deliveries to fundraise. They learned to compromise, to communicate, to trust each other more deeply than ever. Emily's scholarship program had not only connected her with new mentors, but also earned her the attention of Seattle's nonprofit community. And Nathan, once the headline-hardened CEO, was now often seen speaking at community panels, advocating for literacy and educational equity. Together, they created something bigger than themselves. The Santos Hill Literacy Initiative wasn't just a center, it was a movement, and the city was beginning to notice. Full circle moments. On the morning of the grand opening, the building buzzed with energy. Children tugged at parents' hands, excited by balloons and free books. Community leaders arrived in suits and smiles, and at the heart of it all stood Emily, holding Rose's hand as they prepared to cut the ribbon. Nathan kissed her cheek. "You ready?" She looked out at the crowd and then back at him. "I've never been more ready for anything." The ribbon fell, applause rose, and just like that, the dream was real. Inside, Rosa read to a group of toddlers curled on the story rug, while Emily led a tour of the resource rooms. Nathan shook hands with donors and personally thanked every volunteer. But it was later that evening, after the crowds had cleared and the last cookie crumbs had been swept away, that the true magnitude of the moment struck them. They sat together in the reading room, the sun now low and golden behind them, the quiet wrapped around them like a soft quilt. "I can't believe we did this," Emily whispered. "We," Nathan smirked. "This was all you." She turned to him, eyes shining. "No, this was us. Every step, every choice, every sacrifice, a deeper promise." That night, back at their small home, one Nathan had drawn on paper nearly a year, Agatha celebrated with cocoa, candles, and Rosa humming in the kitchen. Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a velvet box. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." Emily's breath caught. He knelt, not because it was expected, but because this moment demanded reverence. "Emily Santos," he said softly, "will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. She laughed, nodding before the words could even come. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Rosa clapped from the doorway, laughing through her tears. "About time, me Amor," leaving a mark. News of the engagement spread quickly, followed by more press about the literacy initiative, their love story, and their unlikely rise together. But Emily and Nathan kept their focus on the small things: tutoring sessions, Rose's garden, dinner at the bakery, and nightly walks. Years later, their wedding was held in the story room of the Literacy Center, surrounded by books, fairy lights, and dozens of children who now knew how to read because of what Emily and Nathan had built. And when they danced under those soft lights, Rosa smiling nearby, volunteers cheering, it wasn't just the celebration of a marriage. It was the culmination of a shared dream. It was a legacy they would continue shaping, side by side. The morning of their wedding dawned bright and clear, the first signs of spring blooming round the Literacy Center where the ceremony would be held. Emily stood before a wide mirror in the small office that had been transformed into a dressing room, Rosa beside her, adjusting the delicate lace on her veil. "You look just like your mother on her wedding day," Rosa said, misty-eyed. Emily smiled softly. "I wish she could be here." "She is," Rosa said, placing a hand over Emily's heart. "She's in every step you take today." Outside, the reading room had been transformed into a garden of light. Twinkling fairy lights wound through bookshelves. White and blush roses adorned the arch under which Emily and Nathan would exchange vows, and children from the center sat in quiet awe, some holding hand-drawn signs that read, "Thank you, Miss Emily, and we love you, Mr. Nathan." Vows of the heart. As music played, a soft string quartet composed of local volunteers seemingly walked down the aisle escorted by Rosa. Every face she passed was familiar. Mentors, classmates, neighbors, volunteers, and former customers from the bakery. Nathan stood at the front, his eyes never leaving her. Their vows were personal, written in whispered hours after long days. Nathan promised to always listen, to always make room for her dreams beside his own. Emily promised to love him not only through joy, but through exhaustion, through challenge, and through change. I choose you every day, she said, and I'll keep choosing you for all the days we're given. I'll always build with you, he said, whether it's a house, a home, or a dream. Tears filled the eyes of nearly everyone in the room as they exchanged rings and kissed to a thunder of applause. Love in practice. Their honeymoon wasn't a grand European tour or a tropical escape. Instead, they rented a cabin a few hours outside of Seattle, quiet, green, full of stars. They spent the week cooking meals together, hiking, talking, and reading books aloud to each other by the fireplace. And it was perfect. When they returned, the Literacy Center welcomed them like heroes. Emily resumed her nonprofit work with renewed purpose, launching satellite programs in underserved areas. Nathan continued consulting, but with a focus on tech solutions that served educational equity. They weren't just working, they were living their mission, expanding horizons. 3 years later, the Santos Hill Initiative had grown into a multi-state nonprofit. Learning centers popped up across the Pacific Northwest. Emily was invited to speak at national education conferences, and Nathan was featured in business journals for his social impact work. Their days were busy, sometimes hectic, often deeply fulfilling, and always anchored in love. One rainy morning, fittingly reminiscent of the day they met, Emily sat in the kitchen with Rosa, sipping tea. She placed a small envelope in Rosa's hand. "What's this?" Rosa asked. "An ultrasound," Emily whispered. "You're going to be a great-grandmother." Rosa's tears came instantly. She hugged Emily tight. "Another beginning," she whispered. "You just keep starting new chapters." Meager. Full circle, again. The nursery Nathan once sketched now came to life. Pale yellow walls, hand-painted storybook characters, and shelves of books waiting to be read aloud. On the wall hung a framed quote, "Love is the story we choose to write together." When their daughter was born, they named her Eleanor Rose, and as they cradled her in the quiet hours of the night, Emily and Nathan found a deeper meaning in everything they had built. The center, the marriage, the life, they were all acts of love that now extended to this tiny new being. Eleanor grew up crawling between library shelves, falling asleep to the sound of her grandmother's stories, and watching her parents devote their lives to lifting others. And when she asked, one rainy evening, "How did you and Daddy meet?" Emily and Nathan smiled at each other, wrapped her in their arms, and said, "In the rain, on a sidewalk, when we weren't looking, but the universe decided we were ready." Legacy in motion. As years passed, the Santos Hill Initiative continued to grow, as did their family. They welcomed a second child, Mateo, and eventually transitioned leadership of the nonprofit to a new generation of passionate educators and community leaders. Emily became a beloved author of children's books rooted in family, resilience, and hope. Nathan focused on mentoring young tech innovators who wanted to blend purpose with profit. And Rose Astle Lively, still wise, remained the heartbeat of their home. They never stopped walking together, never stopped dreaming. Because beginnings, they learned, don't end with a wedding or a birth or a ribbon cutting. Beginnings happen every time you choose to love, to hope, to build. And in every child learning to read at the center, in every story Rosa told, in every kiss shared between busy schedules, Emily and Nathan kept beginning. Together,